So I picked this topic today because I came across a book with the same title, Cosmic Cradle, and it just I always think of the afterlife as, you know, after people die and what's going on after that, and not as much attention is focused on just before we're born. So I thought it might be interesting to have a look through this topic today. So, and I did speak to someone recently who was telling me about their preconception memories before they actually came to the planet, and so it sort of stirred my interest a bit more. So for me, I think, and with anyone who's trying to understand what happens in the afterlife, or if there is an afterlife, and then if there is, what happens, the question that always comes up for me is, you know, why do bad things happen to good people? If there is something like that going on, why do all these, you know, why does this happen? And I guess, you know, we're trying to make sense of our existence and the world, the mechanisms of our existence too. And if there is an afterlife, people have proposed that perhaps, you know, there's karma involved, and that if we reincarnate, then that karma plays itself out as well. I'm not sure, but you know, there are questions like, why do we have negative experiences in our lives? And you see some lovely people who have some tragic things happen in their life, and I sometimes have sort of swayed with the idea of reincarnation backwards and forwards as to, is it just because life can be so difficult sometimes, and that our own psychology, you know, within that emerges this need to have this belief that we are reborn? That's one thing that some people would say, but there's so much evidence to, you know, in the opposite direction, saying, well, there are good reasons why we think that people continue to exist after they're out of their physical form. So some people have proposed that, in regard to that perhaps there's a grand life plan, and it's huge. It's so huge we can't really understand it. So there are lots of complexities and intricacies and various things that play themselves out every time we make a decision, a choice, and then follow through with that. So the idea has been suggested by many people who've had their own experiences, people who are mediums and psychics as well, that we have a spirit guide. And we have a spirit guide to help us make different choices about all those things, while we're in a non-physical form, deciding what's the best way for us to, what's the best thing or the best plan for us to do, so that we can reach the level of understanding and evolution and development that we'd like to have. So they help us make those choices, set those directions, those paths in place. But we need that help because our puny little human, I won't say brain, but mind perhaps, doesn't have the ability to be able to figure out, you know, if we go this direction, then there are these things that follow. And if we go in that direction, there are these things that follow. So there are huge mechanisms in place that we often struggle trying to understand. You know, sometimes we have in our life, why did I meet this person? Why did I have a difficult relationship with that person? Why did, you know, if something hadn't happened, I would never have gone down that path. If you said to me 5 years ago I'd be standing here doing something like this, those sorts of things, I would never have believed it. Circumstances arise, and they are intricate and highly complex. And I personally think that there is a grand plan, but an energy that moves us in particular directions at different times in our lives for specific purposes. And perhaps it's to do with this life plan that we've laid down before we came here. Consequences just ahead. Because we have to think of those consequences when we make a decision about something, don't we? And we tend to think about them, you know, in say a year's time, but you know, what about in 20 lifetimes? You know, where would we be then? What are the consequences of this choice now as it spreads out into the future? Of course, when we come here, regardless of the fact that we may have sat down with a spirit guide and debated and negated their arguments about certain choices that we made, we also come here with our own free will. So that makes it even more complicated. But according to some researchers that I've been reading about lately, they suggest that these spirit guides also know those things. They take free will into account as well, and they can make slight adjustments and allowances for that to happen, for us to mobilise our free will. So that we come here and hopefully not have too rocky a path, so that we can achieve our goals. But, you know, it often ends up like this, doesn't it? And there are times in our life where we think, oh, I don't know, things just aren't coming together, and it's a bit complex and messy, and I don't even know if I've got any direction whatsoever, and I just feel like I'm, you know, treading water. And of course we have these times too, with lots going on. And of course at some stage in our life we'll have something like this go on. So, you know, and those, we can't see that happening, but a whole lot of events come together, and that's what happens. So I've been looking into the work of this guy, Robert Schwartz, who's an American, and he's written these two books, Your Soul's Plan and Your Soul's Gift. And he works with mediums and psychics and does past life regressions and life between life regressions. And he's put together his thoughts, I think, in a very eloquent way. And it seems to, when I look at the whole plan, it seems to make sense to me. And he's suggesting that there is pre-birth planning, and there are 5 main reasons that come up in the research that he's done: to balance karma, for healing for ourselves, to be in service to others, in order to experience contrast, because hey, how are we going to know what it's like to be black if we're white in a white room? So, you know, those sorts of things. So we experience contrast so we can understand who we are. We come to the planet in a soul group. We come with a team of people who show up. They're there to support us, to help us along in our journey, and we reciprocate in their life experience as well. And the soul groups are often, and I'm quoting this from that gentleman's work, the same evolutionary stage as ourselves. They reincarnate repeatedly, often in relationships, often in families. And if anyone knows anything about astrology, you'll find that if you look at your natal chart, your strong placements will always correlate with something in your parents' chart. And so there's a little bit more to astrology than what we may think. And it's like when we're born, it's like a cookie cutter. So it's like our plan is in place in our natal chart. And also we come here to be in service to each other. And we can have these different relationships that we play out with each other. And to the point, you know, best friends and mortal enemies as well. Also murderer and victim, abused and abuser, those sorts of things, because we're having all sorts of experiences to be able to understand and understand, I guess you say, the soul. I think the soul wants to understand itself comprehensively, to the depths of itself. Which brings up the topic, you know, is pregnancy ever an accident? Well, according to these people and the research that many people have done, no, it's not. So before people are born, they sit down and they discuss with their soul guide who would be the best parents and situations for me to be born into, which families would be the best for, so I can play these things out. Well, according to various religions, most of them emerging from India, the Sikhs, the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Jains, they believe as well that there is pre-birth planning, and we think about it very carefully. Also, scientists believe that there are connections between ourselves in a preconception state and a connection with our parents. And these are some of the people that I've found who've said that prenates demonstrate clairvoyance and telepathic sensing and attunement with their parents. Dr. Verney says child's emotional radar picks up maternal emotion. Dr. McGarry says the fetus senses mother's difficulties and miscarries often, not necessarily in relation to the physical concern. And Dr. McCarty says ability from preconception to perceive our parents. And these are people who are working closely with prenates, I should say, before they're born. So the question then, I guess for me, comes up: how do we go from our non-physical state to the parents that we choose, to the situations that we choose? Is there some sort of a cosmic GPS? And I had a few stories here that I thought I'd read to you of people's experiences, which I found quite enlightening. And this is a story from a guy called Tom, and he talks about, I remember being in a dark place, and even though it was dark, it was a comfortable place without pain or want. And I was among or a part of others, like a speck of dust in an endless universe. And I felt I was a part of something that was forever. And it seemed like I always was, and that I would always be, whatever it is that I was part of. Time was endless, and I could not even remember a beginning, nor did I even think of an end. All I can say at the time before birth is I am, and I knew that I was. But there came a time when I was told that I had to go. I was being told to go to a place I didn't want to, but everyone there had to eventually go. And I just didn't believe that I would ever have to leave everything behind. And I don't know what everything is or was, but I knew I had to leave it no matter what kind of argument I put up. And I was angry that I had to leave wherever I was. Even after I was born, I remained angry to leave. And the best thing about being here is that I had the most wonderful mother anyone could ever want. And she was the only person that ever lied to me or hurt to me or did anything bad to me. So he's talking about his memory, and I'm really surprised if you go onto the internet and punch in preconception memories, there are websites full of people's personal stories about their experiences and their memories. And I just met someone recently who said that when he was when he was in that unborn state, he was, kicking and screaming that he didn't want to come to planet Earth. He just didn't like that idea. So, and I've heard that from many people before. So just another story here too is, there's another one. This is from someone called Mandy. And she says, my memory of what I will call heaven is very simple. I was looking down at planet Earth from somewhere that felt like home, and I can't remember seeing anything around me. I was far enough from Earth that I could see the whole planet, but near enough to see the oceans and the land masses. I was very aware that that was where I would be going. There was somebody just to my left, but he felt higher, as if I was sitting and he was standing. And he was a loving and authoritative figure, and I've always felt it was God. And I don't remember seeing him, but he was talking to me without words, and he told me I was about to be born. And I understood what he meant, as though I had done this before. And it was like a briefing, but done with sensitivity and love. And I felt I was leaving for a mission. I asked what I had to do, and he said, you'll know when you find it. And as a toddler, and for many years after, I would lie in my bed and place the palm of my hand against the cold wall. I did this because I didn't feel properly locked into my body, as if a door had been left ajar. I didn't mind the cold wall against my hand because it made me feel grounded and more at one with my body and planet Earth. Interesting story, and there's memories, people have memories of these sort of experiences in their out-of-body state before they actually come into their mother's womb. Here's another short one by Patricia. She says, I cannot remember much prior to this memory, but it was very vivid to me at the time and has stayed with me all my life. And I remember floating through a dark tunnel and going faster and faster. I saw ahead of me a bright red circle with a dark object in it that looked like a bird sitting on a branch. And as I got nearer the object, I remembered thinking, I wonder what I will be this time. And I seemed to become one with the object. And I remember, I might have told you this a while ago, but I did a meditation once, and I wanted to go back to my point of origin, if you could say it like that, where I wanted to remove some sort of programming that I felt I had. So when I did that, in the meditation, I just put the thought out there that I wanted to go back to my point of origin, and I had this experience where I saw this really large white space, and in that space it was actually bright, but it was bright because it was made up of all these individual white lights, but together it looked like one big one, and a small one broke off and it moved through the sky, and as it moved away from the larger group, there was a great sense from the larger group of compassion and concern and worry, but a lot of compassion, but also pride that this one little point of light had broken off and decided to go and do their own thing and to actually become an individual. I guess to individuate, to be able to stand back and look at who they are compared to yourself, and that's how you get to know yourself. So, and that little spark was me. So that was an interesting experience for me, and it had a profound effect on me. It made me sort of realise that that there is something greater, something bigger at work in our lives, and we come from somewhere, even if we don't know where it was. That was my experience of it and my interpretation of it too. So here's another memory from a woman called Andrea, and she says, the first moment of my pre-birth experience that I was allowed to remember was being called by the gods to start the process of being sent down from heaven into physical life. And I remember walking into a room and seeing three figures who had much more authority than I did, but who weren't intimidating or overpowering. And they were looked upon as the wiser souls, and I seemed to know that they worked under someone much more powerful than they, and someone who was kind and who lived in harmony with heaven, but was also in charge of it. Someone whom I'd met before, but didn't see at the gathering. The eyes through which I was looking were unlike any human eye. I was able to look all around me without moving my head. By simply thinking, I could get an aerial view without actually being above. And I could see everything from one side to the opposite side, above to below in one take. And as I walked to the three figures, I was excited and a little nervous. They all wished me luck on my journey and said I would be back before I knew it. And then I remember being sent down through a black tunnel, which was dark but not frightening. And I remember morphing and changing as I went down further down to the tunnel. And I was happy that I was getting to progress and learn new things in another life. The memory ends there. But in this life, the first time I remembered all of this was when I was around the age of 3. And I also remember thinking that this was something that happened to everyone, but not everyone remembered it, so I couldn't talk about it. And the interesting thing I found is, as I was reading many stories about this, the people who described these memories, all said they seemed to remember them around the age of 3. And I don't know what if that's got something to do with our brain's development or the way our memory works. I doubt it, because people are having memories of something when they didn't have a brain. So, I'm not really sure what that's about. And I've just got another story here too. And this is Christian. He says, I recall experiencing a pre-birth waiting period and then subsequently reviewing a vast mental flowchart of my new life. I had a deep sense of what this life would be like, how long it would feel like when I was in it, and it was going to feel very long, and how I might experience different stages, and how likely it was that I might experience certain events. And I remember being very excited about the life. I don't recall actually deciding to accept it, but I do remember being instructed clearly to dive in to the body with all my energy, with full commitment, in order to have the proper connection. And I had the sense that in a past attempt I failed to dive in properly, having hesitated due to the strange sensation of becoming immersed in it, and that I had learned a lesson in that previous failure. So I did dive in this time with all my energy committed, and as I did so, I remember a vast bubble that can only be described as a veil, or a black space of restricted knowing coming over me. And it was extremely strange, uncomfortably strange, and I remember responding in fear. And I recall trying with all my might to leap back out, but I couldn't do so. But then I felt a great sense of amness for a brief moment, almost as if to calm me, telling me, this is still what you are. So there are times that too, that we, in that life plan, we have our exit point as well. And it's basically we get to a point where we say, well, we've done what we came here to do, or circumstances have arisen where I can't complete what I came here to do because something's happened. And I know, I'll tell you another meditation I did at another time too, was when my first marriage broke up, I was very concerned about my daughter because she was only 5, and I was, I felt guilty, I guess, because I had, we hadn't been able to keep it together for her benefit. And I went through all those usual things that you do as a parent when your marriage breaks down and you've got children. But I was in a new relationship, and in the meditation, my ex-husband and my daughter and my second husband were all walking along a beach towards me, except I didn't know it was them at the time. They were way off in the distance. I was just standing on the beach and I saw these 3 figures walking towards me. And as they came close, I recognised who they were. But at the time, my daughter was quite young, and she had light brown hair. Anyway, a young woman was with my ex-husband and my current husband, and she was in her 20s, and she had long dark hair. And, my ex-husband said to me, sorry, I can't complete this mission this time. I just can't do it. I don't have it in me to finish the plan that I came here to start, to do. And he said, but I've got my good friend Martin, who is my second husband. He's come and he's going to help. And he's from my group. And I'm going to hand you over to him, and he'll help you complete your mission. And my daughter was there. It actually turned out to be my daughter, that young woman. She came up to me, she said, it's okay, Mum, I'll be fine, don't you worry. And that was it. And I've never had any other sort of meditation like that ever since. But it sort of brought to my attention, I guess, the idea that we were all working in unison. They were helping me, at that time, and I'm sure I've been helping them in their growth and understanding as well, even if we were banging heads at different times. And for my daughter as well. I mean, she if there is a life plan, she would have chosen to come into life with her father and myself, but I've remained the main component in her life. For whatever reason, I think is still playing itself out and still to emerge. But that was what it was. So I felt then at that time he couldn't complete what he came here to do. So I just went off to someone else came along to help. Also, I've added in here this last one, is there some sort of intervention when sometimes people come so close to dying, don't they, with accidents. And Barry and I would be in a car when we had a very close call with a load that was coming off a truck as it was coming around the corner, and part of it came off in front of my car, directly in front of my car, and the rest of it came off directly behind the car, and it was sheet metal. So it could have easily come into, crashed into my car while I was driving and hurt us quite seriously, but it didn't, and it was very strange. And so we, because we'd been out to nudgy Bora rings and doing some dowsing there, and he turned to me and said, the Aboriginal spirits are with us, or something like that. I think it was. But, you know, there are those times where you have such close calls that, you know, maybe our spirit guide or somehow interferes on our behalf to save us from a situation when they know we're so close to getting something. I don't know, but that's another thing too. After this life, we go to a place where we heal, we integrate what we've learned, and we reevaluate so that when we go on to our next life, we can decide, well, we've done this now, you know, what will we do next? And I remember reading some years ago in one of the near-death experience books that someone had died and they had gone to a place, they'd met the spirit guide or whoever, and they'd taken them to a healing place, and they were sitting there and this golden shower of rain came down over them, but it came down like a vortex around them like that, and it just reminded me of a chakra. You know, you've seen the images of the chakras, and I thought that's interesting that sort of, they described that sort of shape and coming down around the person. I wondered how the mechanics of that healing process. But anyway, that's a bit too big for my wee mind. So we're doing all that. For me, I think an awareness of pre-birth planning, if we do that, helps us ride the currents of life, helps us glide through life a little easier, because we can then sort of stand back a bit and go and try and see the bigger plan that's playing itself out in our life. I think when we get so busy with things, when we're trying to earn a living, we're paying a mortgage, we're doing the shopping, we're unwell, you know, we've got high stress levels, whatever it is, trying to meet deadlines, blah, 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 we're always in the foreground of our life, you know, living in the foreground and forgetting about the background, the bigger picture of what's going on. And I think the more you focus on the bigger picture, the easier life gets, and the easier you glide through life, and because you don't become so emotionally involved in the situations. It's easier to dissociate. So there's some things for you to think about. I know it's nothing new for you, but it's always nice to press the refresh button and think about these things, and maybe something will refresh for you. So I've just put those up there, the Afterlife Discussions group. You can like it on Facebook, it's on Meetup, and also Barry and I do the Strange Encounters Down Under page, and we post various things up there as well. So thank you very much.